I've always been drawn to the raw, unfinished corners of itch.io, indie horror prototypes that feel more like unearthed evidence than games. That's how I discovered Scav Prototype, soon to be known as Casualties, Unknown, created by the developer Orsoniks. The page description was stark, a 2D survival scavenging demo in which you control an experiment, a lab-created anthropomorphic being, dropped onto the hostile layers of the target planet. The sole objective is to descend as far as possible into procedural caves to recover a crashed piece of vital cargo. Survival chances are minimal. Death is frequent, painful, and permanent. The tutorial is required, and bugs are plentiful. I launched it during a quiet, restless night. The game begins without ceremony. You awaken in a drop pod with scant supplies and step into gray, oppressive pixel art caverns that stretch downward in endless tiers. There is no guidance, only the constant need to monitor hunger, thirst, individual limb injuries, spreading infections, morale, and pain that clouds the screen in pulsing red. A misstep can fracture bones, leaving you limping in agony. A hidden bear trap or a landmine can tear a limb apart, forcing you to improvise a tourniquet from scrap metal or a bandage from strange foliage. Consuming the wrong plant risks poison, collapse, or slow decline. Packs of worn things attack relentlessly, their cooldowns ensuring you suffer deep wounds. Traps wait everywhere, spike pits, electrical arcs, air blasts that hurl you into freezing oil pools or drowning water. The true unease comes from the medical realism. The system tracks trauma with brutal precision, similar to Project Zomboid or RimWorld at their most unforgiving. Infections migrate from one limb to another, unchecked bleeding leads to dangerous fluid buildup. In one desperate moment, I used broken glass and adhesive to drain excess from my experiment's legs. Morale erodes from prolonged pain and solitude. A small wristwatch provides fleeting comfort until its description coldly predicts your end from even a minor untreated wound. The experiment expresses suffering through text logs, whimpers, panic, labored breathing, making the disposable creature feel almost painfully alive. Corpses from previous attempts remain scattered in the caves, untouched biomass. I played for hours, dying repeatedly, learning patterns through failure. The deeper layers demanded perfect caution. Then, something shifted. The suffering felt documented in a way that went beyond fiction. The anatomical detail, the clinical detachment in item descriptions, the scattered logs describing experiments as mass-produced and remotely observed. Casualties tallied 4 data yields. The atmosphere pressed on me until I felt genuinely unsettled. In a moment of alarm, I turned to an old anonymous board I used to frequent, 4chan's. I posted carefully, "Has anyone looked closely at Scav Prototype on itch.io? The realism is unsettling, medical mechanics and lore feel drawn from actual experiments. Any details?" The thread grew slowly. Some dismissed it as typical indie edge, others praised the connected universe, references to Gunsaw, GUI, and the Milkies. Then, 2 familiar anons sent private messages with attachments. From old archives, one wrote, "Handle with care." They were scans of heavily redacted government documents from the early 1980s, DARPA-affiliated programs running roughly 1982 to 1987. The files described human analog retrieval trials conducted in sealed underground facilities designed to mimic extraterrestrial conditions. Subjects, augmented individuals labeled as assets, were inserted into multi-level sites filled with mechanical hazards, radiation sources, biological threats, and engineered opposition. Their task, locate and retrieve prototype technology from simulated crash sites while vital signs were tracked from a distance. Failures resulted in casualties unknown, bodies frequently unrecovered, data collected, remains repurposed or left behind. The parallels were startling. Limb-by-limb trauma documentation. Infection progression protocols. Morale degradation from isolation. One report described a subject fracturing a leg in a fall, crawling for days with advancing sepsis, ultimately terminated by controlled hostile entities. It matched my own runs, the exact sequence of traps, the slow bleed mechanics, the despair in the logs. Even the wristwatch appeared, a psychological anchor used in trials to maintain faint hope before inevitable collapse. The worn things echoed vague descriptions of simulated fauna. The procedural caves? They mirrored descriptions of black site tunnel networks, not an alien world. I sat frozen, rereading the documents side by side with the game. The match was too precise to dismiss. Orsoniks had hidden a quiet dedication in buried files, to the Terminated of '84. I sent the developer a message. Is this drawn from real 1980s trials? The documents align completely. No response arrived. During my next attempt, deep in Layer 4, arm infection spreading, morale shattered, the screen flickered. For an instant, the pixels dissolved into a grainy photograph, a figure in a hazmat suit, limbs contorted unnaturally in a real cave. It vanished. When I restarted, the main menu displayed a new entry in the casualty log. My username, timestamped, experiment deployed. Casualties, pending. I removed the game immediately, erased every trace. The printed documents remain hidden away. At quiet moments, when the house is still, I sometimes hear faint sounds, like distant scraping or labored breathing from somewhere below. Do not download it. The trials may never have truly concluded. They continue logging, waiting for the next subject. Biomass is always needed.